Hello and welcome to the Band of One podcast. I am Riley Wilson, and I'm delighted to have you join me. This podcast is created for anybody that wants to become a solo performer or become a more successful solo performer by avoiding a lot of the mistakes and pratfalls that myself and some of my contemporaries have made. I've got over 50 years of live performance experience and will include tips that I've learned over these years, as well as tips from their hardworking pros. If you like what we do, please subscribe and don't forget to share it. Let's get busy. All right, welcome back. This is podcast number 2 with my old friend and mentor, David Fortune. David, so we've covered in the last podcast some reasons that people might want to rethink being in a band environment. But once you moved to South Texas, you kind of changed the focus of what you're doing, almost reinventing yourself. Talk about that with me, please.
Well, when I got down to South Texas, we are so far, because I'm in the very tip of Texas. Everybody knows where SpaceX is. I can sit on my patio and watch the SpaceX launches. That's how far south I am. When I moved down here, the problem is being down here, all of the places that you're going to play that are going to be big enough to be able to support the Willie Nelson tribute band that I did for several years, you got to get to Dallas, and that's when the trip starts. So you got 550 miles, you got 10 hours of driving before you now start to head off to wherever you're going to play. And then when you come home, wherever you are, if you got to add another 550 miles to get back down here, and it is just exhausting. Plus, now with the price of gas being ridiculous, it's just not feasible. It just doesn't work anymore. And I thought, well, I would give Willie a rest. There are places down here because I live in a retirement resort, and there's 50 or 60 of them here in the Rio Grande Valley. And if I want to, I can start doing the Willie Nelson tribute again. But the best drummer in South Dallas, who was in my band, had a stroke and he can't drum anymore. So I'd have to find some new guys. That's an awful lot of work. And I went out and did the Jimmy Buffett thing on the island, which was great fun, but after a while, there you're 100% dependent on the weather because almost all of the venues are open. Jimmy Buffett just opened a new Margaritaville last month right there in South Padre. Wow. When you go out there, it'll hold 400 or 500 people easily, but it's 100% outdoors. So the people that are playing there this afternoon, they've got a shade over them, but the sun is broiling them. The ones that are playing this evening, if the wind comes up to 40 miles an hour, they got to pack it up and go in. If it rains, if it turns cold. Down here, the winters are really warm, but in the evenings, if it gets cold, the gig is canceled. And that's just an awful lot of trouble, an awful lot of work. So I started thinking, what is something else that I could do that would be more fun and more enjoyable? And I started thinking about you. And I started thinking about the place because I follow you on Facebook and I see that all of the places you're playing, and I always watch your videos, and you're playing these nice wine bars and country clubs and all of these nice venues, most of which are indoors. And I looked at it, I thought, okay, well, I'm not nearly as versatile as you are because you can play anything and sing anything, and I'm not that versatile. But what I could do that nobody down here has is the restaurants and the country clubs have been bringing in mariachi bands. So I started talking to some local people and asking them, do you really like the mariachi bands? And they said, no, the old people do. And that's why they have mariachi bands. And I found out that the mariachi bands are incredibly expensive down here. You would not believe how much they cost. So I asked them, what would you think? And I kind of thought back to my days of living in Chicago. What would you think of someone sitting around and playing smooth jazz guitar, not experimental jazz, not progressive jazz, just smooth jazz? And smooth jazz, if you really listen to it carefully, it's blues with all the distortion turned off and slowed down, and it's smooth. And then because where I live, we are predominantly Hispanic down here, I started studying bossa nova a little bit and found if you throw a little bit of bossa nova in with some smooth jazz, everybody loves it. And so I started following in your footsteps and looking for gigs that were indoors at nice restaurants. And I was extremely blessed. When I started out, you got to everybody that follows your blog, and by the way, I advise everybody that is listening to it to follow it closely, listen to each one of your sessions more than once, take notes, and do exactly what Riley tells you to, because if you do, you will succeed. And so what I did is I started sending out samples of my music to all the nice restaurants and country clubs in the area. And they called me from beautiful country club 10 miles from my house and said, could you come out and play for us a couple times? And I said, sure. So I went out and did it. They liked it. I had a 2-year residency there. And
wow.
Here is the best part of all. When COVID came out and it just literally shut down all the bars, and because there's a lot of entertainment. I live in since it's a resort area, people want to go to resorts and they want to go out. They want to have nice music. They want to have bands. They want to have, all the Willy Bully, Mustache Sally, Margaritaville, and all of that. Well, that's all fun. Like I said, those are all outdoor venues. So I had a residency at the country club, and I had started there when COVID hit. And in Texas, well, you're in Texas.
Yes.
The way I calculated it was, if 51% of your total revenue comes from alcohol sales, you are a bar and you're closed. If you're just a restaurant, don't serve alcohol, that's fine, you're open, but those people don't employ musicians. At the country club, the bulk of their revenue comes from memberships. Most of the rest of it comes from golf. And although they had a couple of bars and a couple of restaurants, liquor was a very small part of their business. When COVID shut everyone else down and all my musician friends in the area were at home worrying, I was playing. I did not miss a single weekend.
That's so incredible. I talked about this on an earlier podcast. I was very fortunate because when COVID hit, it took about 3 or 4 months. And then most of the residents here in Texas, and I realize this will be hard for people outside the Lone Star State to understand, but most of the residents just said this to COVID. This is nonsense. We're not going to get played. I ended up playing private parties, I think, in June of that year, and was reasonably busy for the rest of the year. Some of the gigs, you had to wear a mask and stuff like that, but it was pretty much dissipated rather quickly. And so I'm impressed, first of all, that you reinvented yourself. Well, I want to go back to something that you showed me when we were doing guitar lessons many years ago. You had a business plan you had written out on a piece of paper. In fact, I scanned it and saved it into my Macintosh. And in fact, one of the interesting things that you said is that you said, this is what the business plan is going to look like. This is what we're going to be doing. These are the people we're going to be contacting for work. This is what it's going to require in terms of equipment. This is going to require travel and all of that. It was incredibly well thought out. Now, I know that you have a business background, but for dumblings like me that did not do that, that was incredibly impressive. Did you create a business plan when you decided to switch the ladder from maybe the solo actor Willie thing or the Margaritaville thing to the smooth jazz thing? Did you actually write out a business plan for that, or did you modify the one you already had?
Well, I basically sat down and I had the first one in my head and said, okay, if I want to do this, now what will I need? Because one of the things I wanted to do was get it down to enough equipment that I would have the volume necessary to be able to be heard, but this poor old man, like I tell people when they say, what do you charge to play? I always tell them I play for free. And they say, well, then we want you 7 days a week. And I say, but I do charge to haul my equipment in, set it all up, and then take it all apart and haul it all back out again at the end of the evening. And that cools their jets quite a bit.
That's great.
I did lay out, okay, here's all the elements that I'm going to need. Now, what can I take out and how can I make it simpler? And, you use the Bose system and the Bose sticks. So do I. I discovered that with my guitar amplifier, which is a Quilter, they're fabulous amps, very expensive, but very lightweight and very powerful. Well, they came out with a new unit, which was just the electronics, which you can plug straight into anybody's PA. So if someone has an existing PA, when I go play, I just plug straight into their PA. If not, I can go straight into the Bose, or if I want to, I can take the Quilter, but I'm not hauling in very much equipment. And I did lay out the plan, but it was just much simpler because I didn't have the elements like the long distance travel and all of those things. It's just much easier. I don't play. I'm playing now at a wine bar that's about 15 minutes from my house. And I really don't go out much farther than that because it's not necessary. And the good news is Dad was right. I have friends that are my age that have to play 4 or 5 times a week. They have to play. I don't have to play if I don't feel like it. And that was because I had the wonderful hobby of music, but I had a career which has given me a retirement. So if I don't feel like playing, like right now, as hot as it is, I simply won't take outdoor gigs because I have done the country club that I played at one point said, we would really like to get a little bit of fun and excitement over at the swimming pool. Would you play out at the swimming pool? Well, I didn't have a choice because if I would have said, no, I don't want to, they would have found somebody that did want to, and I probably would have ended up losing the gig. So I went out and played some weekends at the swimming pool. And in this kind of weather, it's no fun.
Yeah.
No fun at all because you're not in the pool. You're standing up there. I had a nice stage and I had a nice shade and all that. But when the wind dies, it is just really hot. You know that it's just as hot as it is here. And you know that from outdoor gigs.
Absolutely.
So I've got it down to the least amount of equipment that I can take. And then, of course, for everything, I have a backup, but the backup stays in the van and I don't bring it in unless something goes wrong. And so far, nothing's gone wrong. So I only bring in half of my equipment. And I didn't put together the extensive business plan. I just took the elements of it that I needed.
Interesting. So I want to address something else because, as I said before, you're a great singer and you've sung in bands really since you were a kid, and you're not really doing any of much vocals nowadays, right?
Right.
Okay. So was that difficult to give up? Does it matter?
Well, in my case, I kind of didn't have any choice because something that you and I've never talked about is I developed nodules on my vocal. I have no idea what it was from.
Okay.
Went and saw, and I was playing in a jam session that we have here at the retirement resort that I live at, and my voice was just getting worse and worse and worse. And I got up and was doing an Eagles tune, and it was so bad that I told the rest of the guys right in the middle. I said, "Stop, stop, stop!" I said that I'm embarrassing myself and I'm insulting the Eagles. This is just terrible. And a friend of mine that happened to be there that lives in here as a nurse afterwards said, "David, you need to go see an ENT. There's something wrong with your throat." And I saw an ENT and he took a look down there and said, "Yeah, you got nodules. If you're planning on ever singing again, we need to go and get those out." So I had surgery, and I used to be able to do the 90-minute Willie concert with no breaks, the only singer. And you got to really push it because Willie inhales clear down to his toes, as he says. And afterwards, the surgeon said, "Okay, you've got your voice, but I don't know that you have your stamina." He said, "You may want to think about doing something where you can do more lead playing than anything else." Oh. And so that's part of what prompted it is I couldn't go if I went. That's why I put together the 4-piece band, because we spread the singing over the 4 of us. Everybody sang, and that would take the pressure off me. Well, then when that all fell apart, I needed to come up with something that I was just playing guitar on. And I've always loved smooth jazz. When I lived in Chicago, I used to go to downtown to hear all the smooth jazz players. And whenever Sade was in town, I'd go to her concerts and all that. And I always loved it and always thought, well, that would be fun to do. And like anything else, it would have been nice if I would have been a lot shorter if I could have come to see you and said, "Would you show me how to play this?" Because it's basically, like I said, it's basically blues, but it's not. There's a lot of subtle nuances in there. And it would have been a lot easier if I could have come to see you, but I couldn't. I'm clear down here. So I just listened and played until I finally got it. And then what I did, I don't want to take requests, because when you get requests, you've lost control of your show. And I don't want the audience to know that I can sing, because once they find out you can sing, then they start asking. So what I did is I simply put together, and if you're playing if you take Carlos Santana and take off all the distortion, Carlos is playing smooth jazz and with a Latin bossa nova beat mixed in. So what I did is I just put together my own songs and then got the backing tracks recorded. So I'm playing with myself, and people don't recognize the song. Occasionally I'll throw in something by the Eagles or a Sade are one of those, but I don't sing it because if they find out I can sing, then they're going to start asking for it. So that's how I got around that whole thing.
You know,
And
it's really interesting because a lot of places that I play, if I don't play vocal tunes, people are all right with that. For example, I did a gig in the Colony at a golf club on Saturday night. After having played an outdoor one in Durant from 12:30 to 2 when it was 99 degrees outside. Fortunately, I was
oh,
under a shelter and it wasn't too bad. But I'm playing probably half the show was instrumental guitar. It sounded good. The people enjoyed it. And the people are eating dinner. And I think that one of the things we really haven't mentioned, but if you're playing at a country club or a restaurant or whatever, people are there to visit, they're there to talk. And if you're singing, that's kind of like somebody talking in their ear while they're trying to listen to somebody else. And I think that smooth jazz or instrumental music of whatever sort is wonderful for that. And here's another question. Does it satisfy the desire that you have to play out by playing instrumental?
yes, it really does. And I don't have anybody in the back of the room yelling, free bird, free bird. You know, every gig, we both know this, every gig you've ever done, there's some guy in the back of the room that yells free bird. And I used to try to explain to the audience that it takes three guitars to play free bird, and I'm here by myself, so I can't possibly do it. I just learned to ignore them. And the place I'm playing now, no one yells Freebird, and it does satisfy me, even though there's every now and then, you know, I would like to, if I'm doing I Can't Tell You Why by the Eagles, I would like to go ahead and sing along with it. But I know the minute I do that, I've just changed the entire paradigm. And now people are going to say, oh, well, you can sing. Could you do Margaritaville? Well, yeah, I know Margaritaville and I've done it 500 times, but I don't really want to do it again. And so actually, I find out that without singing, I'm just as happy because I'm expressing, because I'm improvising over tracks that I have made. And I keep most of my stuff pretty simple, and I'm improvising over the top, and it really is actually very, very satisfying. And
That
I don't have to worry about running out of steam with my voice because every show they're all 3 hours long, and I don't have to worry about something going wrong with my voice.
That's excellent. You know, I hope that people, as they've been watching these two podcasts, are in fact taking notes because you've shared in fact, I'm gonna have to go back and watch and take some notes with this because this has been like drinking from a fire hose. Which I think is wonderful because again, I point out in every one of these podcasts that I want them to be entertaining, but I want them to be actionable so people can use things. And I think one of the things that's impressed me the most about your musical journey is that you have had no qualms about reinventing your show.
Well, sometimes you have to. I really wasn't planning. And I asked the doctor, I said, I don't smoke, never did. What caused these nodules? And he said, with some people, it's they're forcing themselves, really pushing the singing. And he said, that's why Joe Cocker sounded the way he did and had that beautiful whiskey voice. Because early on when he was young, and the doctor was younger than me, but he knew, he by the way, was a musician too. So he knew what was going on. And he said, Joe pushed it so hard, so young that he ended up with that whiskey voice, which made him incredibly famous. But he said, I had you sing for me when you first came in. And he said, you're not pushing it at all. So he said, sometimes it's just bad luck. But that made me have to change. And when I had the surgery, I could not talk at all for 30 days after. Dead silence. I had to carry around a card in my pocket when I went in the store that I would hold up and I would say, I had throat surgery. I cannot speak. My hearing is perfect and I'm not retarded. It's okay to talk to me like you would anybody else. I will write. And I had a notepad and I would write the answer. And during that period, one of my friends at the resort I live at, who's a musician, said, well, you're just going to have to find something where you're doing all lead. And it was when he said that, I thought, well, that'll never work. And then I got to thinking about it. Wait a minute, smooth jazz and smooth jazz guitar, you're either doing one, or you're improvising over the top. So in that case, I kind of had to reinvent myself, and I'm actually having a great time doing it. It's great fun. The places that I play are places that I play regularly. So I know the owners, know a lot of their audience. I'm wireless, so I can go out and walk around amongst them. And it really is great fun. Could I address your audience for a minute and just give them a
Absolutely, yes, please.
For those of you that are listening to Riley's podcasts, and I follow them faithfully because they're absolutely fascinating to me. If this podcast that he is doing would have been around when I was thinking, gee, wouldn't it be nice to be able to do this without all of the inherent and built-in problems of band life, it would have made my life so much easier because nobody had a podcast like this. I had to figure this all out for myself. So my advice to you would be listen to the podcasts faithfully, take notes, go back and then listen to them again and take more notes, because Riley's telling you exactly what you have to do to be successful. And he's giving you the formula. It may not be written down on a piece of paper that you can checklist that you can go down through, but he is giving you the exact formula to do what you need to do to be successful. And if you're doing what he and I are both doing and you're not successful at it, it's really not much fun. But if you are successful at it, it can be a great deal of fun. And look at Riley. He's playing several times a week, and the gigs that he's getting are the cream right off the top. He's not playing at smoky old nasty bars where you got drunks sloshing beer on your amplifier and all of your equipment. He's playing really, really nice gigs because he always posts videos, and I always watch those videos on Facebook. And you can do the exact same thing that he's doing and I'm doing. You just need a plan. And he talked about the business plan I laid out when I first did the Willie Nelson tribute. He's giving you your business plan right here. You just need to listen to him, write it down, study it, and then do exactly what he says, and it will work.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. One thing about all of this that's really intriguing, I think probably more of our viewers are going to be aligned with your business model than mine, because again, as I said, in fact, I pointed this out at a podcast a few weeks ago. I've always been the only sole working professional in my band. My duo and trio here in Dallas, for example, were both guys that had great corporate jobs. And so they played on the weekend for fun. And I suspect that the majority of our listeners are going to fall into that category, are folks that have a job during the week, but they want to get out and play once or twice, maybe 3 times if it's a busy week. And they want to have fun and enjoy the process. And I think that the biggest thing that you're communicating and we're trying to share with folks is that it can be fun even in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond. And I think that's interesting. Let's talk gear for just a brief moment. You mentioned playing smooth jazz. You're not using a Willie Nelson distressed nylon string anymore for guitar, are you?
No, I'm not. In fact, I've got several Gretches, and I prefer Gretsch over Gibson beat just because the pickups are different. They're not quite as muddy. They cut through. And so I play hollow body Gretches. And I have an old shoulder rotator cuff injury that has flared up. And I'm getting physical therapy for it right now. But it's hard to get my arm reach around that Gretsch for 3 hours and play it. So what I've done now is I've switched over to my thin line partial hollow body Telecasters. And I just changed out the strings, and you back off on the tone. People that say that you cannot get a jazz tone out of a Telecaster haven't had the right amplifier and tried. And then I'm going, and then I run and one of the fortunate things about having had a career, by the way, for your listeners, if you want a career in music, then you need to follow in Riley's footsteps. You need to go to an excellent accredited school of music, get a degree so you know what you're doing, set up a studio, and get yourself a stable group of students who will stick with you, because that then can be the basis for everything you want to do. Because that is, yes, he's having fun, but it's a business and it operates like a business, and that supports him. And then he can go out, and that way he doesn't have to do a gig if he doesn't want to. I have friends that didn't do that. They taught themselves how to play. They're very good, but they're my age, 72 years old, and they have to play. And in their cases, they have one guitar because that's what they can afford, and they better hope and pray that nothing happens to it, because if it does, they're in trouble. The advantage of my having had a career is I'm down to 37 guitars now, because I gave a number of them to my sons, because my studio down here isn't as big as the one I had in Dallas, and so I didn't have enough room, so I gave some of them away. But I switch off through an assortment. I have half a dozen Telecaster thin lines, which is what I'm playing now. If the physical therapy works, I'll go back to playing the Gretsch because they just got wonderful tone and they look so cool. And then I go through a quilter amplifier, and if I need a little bit more oomph, which with smooth jazz, people don't want it loud because, as you said, they're talking and eating, and they may not be looking at you, but they are listening because at the end of each tune they applaud. But they can talk, and the good news is it's preserving my hearing. When you're playing in a loud rock band, even if you've got earplugs in, it is damaging your hearing. So I've got an assortment of guitars I choose from. Right now, I actually choose because when I play, I always wear a suit, and I choose whichever guitar matches the hat that I'm wearing that weekend.
That's very cool. By the way, those folks that are interested in smooth jazz, and that's been a big love of mine as well as David's for many, many years. In fact, you're the guy that said I need to pick up some Otmar Liebert tunes. People love Barcelona Nights everywhere I play it. I need to do a better job with Santa Fe, but all of this stuff works. But there is a marvelous post that happened just this week on Facebook, and it was from the great jazz bassist, or the great studio bassist, Carol Kay. She was a marvelous jazz guitar player before she ever started playing sessions in California in the late 50s and 60s in bass. She says use flat wound strings. She said pick right by the fingerboard, and she said don't pick too hard. She said pick lightly, and she said that will help you get the jazz tone that everybody is craving. And then let's talk about, you mentioned tracks for a moment. That's something obviously that we also have in common because I've used those for years, although I'm having a little tweak with that, which we'll talk about in an upcoming podcast. But do you create tracks yourself? Do you have them done elsewhere? How do you do all of that?
Well, let me tell you how I discovered tracks. I was living in Chicago. I'm downtown at a restaurant. I didn't live in Chicago. I was in one of the suburbs, and I went down to my favorite restaurant and was finishing dinner. And upstairs, I heard a band. Oh, wow, these guys sound good. I can hear their drummer. I can hear their lead player and their bass player and the keyboard player and an acoustic guitar. So I go upstairs, and there is a guy sitting in front of a keyboard with an acoustic guitar player sitting next to him. And I could not figure it. And this was a long time ago. I couldn't figure out how they were doing this, but I kept watching the keyboard player, and he would reach over, he'd look at the guitar player who would give him a nod, and he'd reach over with his right hand and he'd push the same button. So I knew something was going on there. And there's their drummer starts off. Here's their lead player. So you've got two singers, one playing an acoustic guitar, one playing keyboard. They sounded like a full band, and they were fabulous. So afterwards, I said, how in the world are you doing that? He said, well, I have my own recorded tracks. I put them in the keyboard. They're in there in MIDI format. But he said, in order to do these, you have to go buy yourself a Roland home studio model, blah, 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 blah. And I said to him, you're not going to believe this. I just bought one of those last week. I haven't had a chance to learn how to use it yet. And he said, that's how you do it. So at that point, I started recording the tracks on there. And what I would do is I'd get a drummer to come in and do the drum tracks because I'm not a drummer, and would put everything that I needed in there. Well, then I discovered since then that you can do it all inside a computer, and you can record. I use Audacity, and you can record your own tracks to it. But what you do first is you go to Band in a Box or one of those. You find the drum that you want. Okay, you lay down your drums, and then you put everything in there. And anything that you yourself want in there that you can't do, you can go on the internet and you can find it and download it. And then it's just a matter of matching up the speeds. So I build my own tracks. Some of it's me playing, and some of it is, me having started off with Band in the Box or something else, and I assemble my own tracks because it's hard to find exactly what you want. There's a lot of people that are selling MIDI tracks, but now you're getting into the MIDI world, and I really don't want to do that. And it's hard to find exactly what you want. So if you build it yourself, it's easier.
So what do you use for a playback device?
I use the same. I've got these little bitty, I've forgotten the brand, the model now, but they're tiny MP3 players. And when I bought them, they were $80 each, and that was 10 or 15 years ago. Now they're $400 each because everybody wants one, because it's not a touch screen. Because when you're up there on stage, and you got all things going on and all the distractions. If you accidentally touch the wrong spot in the screen, you may have a problem. These are old and they actually click. So when you touch it and you want to turn on play, it clicks and you can feel it. When you want to push pause, you touch. Oh, it's a Sansa sand disc.
Yeah.
They make, and I've used the same three. I've got three of them that are loaded identically. So if one of them poops out on me, all I've got to do is reach over to my stand, pick another one up, hook it up, find that song, and start back up again. So far, they've never one of them has failed on me. And I just rotate them through so they get some charging and some use.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Man, this is again, as I said, these two episodes have been kind of like drinking from a fire hose. First of all, thanks muchly for all of the wisdom. We've gone across two pretty long episodes, and I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. Anything that you would encourage somebody, like let's say maybe somebody that's been in a band or they're in a band right now and they're feeling some of the pain that you and I have discussed about being in bands, about traveling long distances, not making much money. There was a story that I think that Joe Cocker got home from the Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour, and I think made either $104 or $4. I'm not sure what it was. The Police pocketed about $20 a piece, or a little bit more than that, after the end of their first U.S. tour where they came over here and just played. So we obviously know that there are advantages, but what advice might you share somebody that is thinking about making the leap and becoming a solo performer?
Well, number one, the first thing I would do is I would go out and go find out where Riley's playing. Find out, if it's a private party, you can't go, but every place else you can. Find out where he's playing and go watch a master do what it is you're thinking about doing, because everything is always different than you thought it was going to be when you actually get into it. So go watch him. Then go watch all the other solos that you can find wherever you happen to live. Because, you're in Dallas. I used to be in Dallas. We're not just talking to Dallas people. There will be people all over country and all over the world who listen to this podcast. So go find the solos. And I will just throw in something here. I live right next to South Padre Island. Most of the guys that are playing on the island are now solo acts, and every one of them, one guy, an example, he had the hottest band for 30 years here. He could draw 1,000 people no matter where he went. And he now plays by himself on an acoustic guitar, does exactly what Riley and I do, because he got tired of the band thing. It just wore him out. He's a retired school teacher. He's absolutely wonderful. He still draws a good crowd. So everybody seems to get to that point eventually. Well, you don't need to wait until you're 60 to do this. You can do it now. Go watch the people that are doing it, the successful ones. Find out who's really good, and think of it as a business. Take notes. Notice what they do that you like. Notice what they do that you don't like. Notice what worked, what didn't work. And this is not a plug for Riley. I learned a lot from Riley. I can't, personally, he is the best guitar player that I have ever known personally. And he was referring to Otmar Liebert. If you don't know who Otmar is, get on the internet, pull up some of Otmar's music. It's absolutely incredible, and it is hard to play, and most people simply can't play it. And I just went and saw last Friday night. Went and saw a friend of mine playing at the same wine bar that I play at, and he and you are the only two people that I know personally that can play it. And you're both concentrating when you're playing it, because it is hard, because it's incredible music, but it's beautiful. Then the next thing I would do, if you're in Dallas, go get some lessons from Riley, not necessarily on guitar, but lessons on how to do this, because there's going to be some things you're going to have to do differently than in a band. For example, in a band, when you make a mistake, you got 2 or 3 other guys to cover for you. You don't have anybody to cover for you when you're by yourself. You don't have the other guys, and that my brother, who does the exact same thing that you and I do and lives in Myrtle Beach, does the same thing. He had bands for years. He had a career. He's retired now, and he does just what we do. He got tired of the bands, and he did solo for several years. Well, he just told me last week that he's starting up another band, and I said, "Oh, you've forgotten all the miseries that go along with the band." I said, I give your band 6 months, and then you'll be tired of it, and you'll go back to solos. But if you don't have someone if you're not close enough to go get some lessons from Riley in how to do what it is that we both do, find someone like him that can show you. Find someone who's not only a studio teacher, because I've known guys that were studio teachers who never did public gigs and never had. They didn't need to, and they really literally had no clue. Find someone like Riley who both teaches and does professional gigs. Get some lessons from them, and then go listen to them. Follow what they do, and then figure out what you got to find your market. And in my market, it happened to be smooth jazz because no one else around here is doing it. So I'm the only one that does it.
Everybody's everything, right?
It is. And everybody else is doing the beach thing. And that's kind of fun, but it's actually not near as much fun as I'm having right now. So find what your niche is going to be, and then get as deep into that as you can. But don't try to do it by yourself. The very first thing is, seriously, and I'm not just plugging Riley's podcast. I like them. I think they're great. I wish they would have had them somebody would have done it when I started. Make notes and treat your startup like a business. You're not just going out there to goof off, because if you're doing it right, you're going to be fairly well paid. Music doesn't pay extremely well. For example, in Austin, there are guys like Red Volkert, who played lead guitar with Merle Haggard for 20 years. He's playing at a little club downtown, and Red gets paid more than anybody else in the area, and he gets $100 a night. Now that's terrible. You know who he is. The guy's brilliant.
Red Volkert is a world-class guitar player. Absolutely.
Absolutely. He gets $100. That's more than anybody else. My friend Jackson Taylor couldn't work in Austin because, as well known as he was and as popular as he was, they'd still only pay him $100 a night. When you're doing, that's the other part that we didn't talk about yet. When you're doing the solo thing, you don't have anybody to split. You don't have anybody else to count on, nobody else to load your equipment, but at the end of the evening, you don't have to split that with anybody. And you can make some money and have some fun. So treat it like a business, take it seriously, do it seriously, because the people that, if you're in the right venues, their expectations are going to be high. And when you live up to those expectations, they're going to invite you back. But go back through this podcast and literally take notes. And Riley, how long is this podcast going to go on? I didn't ask you that.
We're going to be wrapping up in just a moment. You know, you mentioned something about taking notes, and I think that's really, really vital. There was a guy, and you mentioned Myrtle Beach. I played Myrtle Beach for many, many years when we were based in Raleigh, North Carolina. And there's a lot of markets across the United States and really across the world where you can play music. The idea, of course, is to take what you do seriously, which was what we're talking about here. Make an effort, make a plan so that you're not just winging it. I think it's important to give yourself some slack when you don't do really, really well. But the idea, and I've always told folks, is to try and record what you do, go back and listen to it and see, what can I do differently? What can I do better? David, as I said, this has been 2 episodes of Drinking from a Fire Hose, my friend. I've learned a lot. I'm going to go back and do this, and I wish you guys all the best. We'll talk again soon. You've been listening to the Band of One podcast. I am Riley Wilson, and thank you for joining us today. Hope that you have done what David has suggested, which is to listen to this carefully and take notes. If you do, I promise it's going to help your solo act. If you have ideas for upcoming podcasts in the future, please reach out to us directly through my Facebook page, The Band of One Podcast. You can also contact me directly through my webpage, which is guitarmadesimpler.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.